morning, everyone, and welcome to Think Future. My name is Chris Kalabukas, and once again, we're coming at you live from deep in the heart of Silicon Valley, California. We're talking innovation startups of the future, not necessarily those, and not necessarily in that order. If you're watching on YouTube, smack that subscribe button and hit that bell so you can be notified when a new show comes online. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast service, please subscribe and please drop a note on Apple Podcasts. I greatly appreciate it. Now, what were we talking about today? Oh, yeah. So, I read an article that people were starting to get tired of streaming services. And I thought, here we go again. It's just like, it's funny how things repeat themselves over and over and over again, right? Do you remember saying to yourself, or maybe your parents saying something like, oh, there's 500 channels and there's nothing on. There's 10 channels and there's nothing on. There's 500 channels and there's nothing on. Now we have 5,000 channels and there's nothing on. 10,000 channels and there's nothing on. Infinite number of channels and there's nothing on. Although if you ask me, if you had infinite number of channels, one of those channels would be interesting to you. So what's happening here? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. There's a disconnect between what the customer wants and what the provider is creating. Where do they get ideas for the streaming content that they're developing? Where do these concepts come from? And there's a lot of commentary lately that one of the problems with the content that's coming out is just going down to lowest common denominator, which is, of course, what people want because they hit the biggest audience for the buck, right? So instead of developing super targeted content specifically for a small demographic, they decide to create content for everything. So it gets dumber and dumber and dumber instead of it being for specific demographics. And this is a problem I had when I was working at Yahoo. I remember we had this big discussion when we had these new products coming out, that we came up with these fantastic new products, but they were all targeted to audiences of smaller than 1 million. And I remember one of our sage senior management at the time said, that's the problem we have. We don't know how to cater to audiences below 1 million. And I thought to myself, well, every audience is eventually going to be below 1 million. And in fact, every audience is eventually going to be a single person, or maybe 2 people watching TV, or a family watching TV at once. Every audience will be reduced to an audience of 1 or 5, 6 at the most. So if you are reducing, if every audience, because if you think about it, we're still thinking in the mass audience space. All of us are still thinking, all of us content creators are still thinking in the mass audience space. The more people I can get to watch my show, the better. No. If the right people watch your show, then the better. It's quality over quantity. You need to target those specific individuals who want to watch the show. So, and the problem with these streaming services is exactly the same thing. They are not focused on minimizing or encapsulating or speaking directly to the market that they're trying to reach with this program. The streaming content that they're creating is a mismatch with the streaming content that they want. So they just keep dumbing it down and dumbing it down and dumbing it down until they hit a number which is palatable. Is the content any good? No, because it's targeted to the lowest common denominator. Anybody who has any particular kind of interest in a specific thing, they look at it and go, oh God, this is just like the crap we used to watch on regular TV. I mean, one of the beautiful things about streaming services is that we can have super narrowly targeted streaming services specific to a demographic. So if I'm interested in science fiction from the 2000s, I can go out there and watch a show or watch a channel that will only show me science fiction from the 2000s. But is that enough of a demographic for you to actually build a show similar to that? So the future of content streaming is a little further out. And I think this is where we're going to go. We're going to go to the point where it's going to be super personalized, super individualized. So it's going to know exactly what you personally like, and it's going to create a show for you, just you. Let's say you're a big fan of far future science fiction like I am. So what's going to happen is that one day on your Netflix queue, something's going to pop up and it'll say something like far future vision of blah, 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 blah. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. But you know what's interesting about that is that nobody else sees that. Nobody else sees this except for other people who are into far future science fiction. So it could be a very small number of people. It could be a couple thousand people. And then when you click it, what happens is it creates the show on the fly using all of the past tropes in a new combination that appeals specifically to you. To you. Customized, personalized, hyper-personalized to what you like to look at. So if you love anything that Gene Roddenberry's created, like if you love, say, Star Trek and Andromeda and Earth Final Conflict and all these other things that Gene Roddenberry created, it can create a Roddenberry-esque science fiction series with as many episodes as you want and tune it to exactly what you like. And based on being able to track your eye movements and how interested you are and all of these other things, it can actually tweak and change the show as it's going and create a brand new hyper-personalized version of this program specifically for you. You're the only one watching this. You think you think other people are watching this show? No. You're the only one watching this particular thread of a show. And the AI is going to decide which direction the characters go in based on you. It's going to sense your feelings, your emotions, your eye movements, and it's going to create more show based on the way you react to it. Now that is the far future of content creation. So we are now in this weird sandwich space between now where no one can figure out exactly what people like to a hyper-personalized space where the stuff's created on the fly as people like it. So all we need is to figure out this middle space. How can we create content that appeals to more individuals without talking about the lowest common denominator? Well, if you ask me, we need some way to identify specific markets and build to those markets. We need a way to say, if I'm going to create a show for 2,000 people, for an audience of 2,000 people, not 200 million people, or not 2 million people, of 2,000 people or 200,000 people, how can I create that show in a effective and efficient and cost-effective way so that those 200,000 people get a really quality experience that I can make money back on? We need to figure that out. And if you ask me, AI will probably come into the picture as well. But if you have any ideas of what you think we can do in order to bridge that gap, leave a note in the comments below. That's it for me for today. See you next time, and until then, don't forget to think future.